Okay, Nicolás.
As you know, you've got 15 minutes to present, and after your presentation, you'll have a seat and you'll receive some questions from the commission.
Okay.
You can start now.
First of all, welcome to this presentation. This is Kahooting with teach-nology, a research that I conducted in these 4 months of seminar and internship in adult education under the guidance of Patricia Pino Castillo, our advisor. To state the research problem, we have to go back to the internship stages, in which I was able to check that there is a problem in the classroom, where students were using their smartphones just for fun in that case. They were using Facebook, WhatsApp, and everything that's not related to the class. And when asked to use them for educational purposes, the use was limited only to e-dictionaries, for example, word reference. And well, this is a distraction, and the consequences for this is the lack of rich words used when they're talking or writing to their classmates or the teachers in that case. So then, I wanted to conduct a research based on technology, mobile technology, to favor these students in the field. In one research, a teacher used SMS, short messages, to deliver academic words to the cell phones of students. The problem was the cost associated with it. A second study used interactive activities using web platforms, video images, or sound for migrant women coming from non-Roman alphabet countries, for example, Libya, China. And this presented a challenge because they had to learn our system of writing. A third study used social networks for such as Telegram, Google Drive, Google Photos to reinforce grammar, but it was not in my field. It was related to grammar, but it's interesting to know the potential of such tools for learning. And Drugovic, Tabelancelli talk about the broad effects of code, that's the predecessor of mole in that case, not only in grammar or vocabulary, but every single dimension of English. But the problem is the lack of generalizability of such studies for the Chilean adult learning context. And UNESCO created 2 documents talking about the injection of mold in Latin America in the secondary and primary schools. And in a second document mentioned the good effects it had on the learning, especially for those ones that are in lower social classes. But there is no research based on the universities in Latin America, nor adult learners. So this is a gap I wanted to fulfill in that case. And so I wanted to check more about the definition of vocabulary and intake. Hold on. Sorry. Yeah. The definition of vocabulary is the minimal set of words that is able to combine a word. Each set of words have meaning for the person in order to express their own feelings or what do they think. Intake, in terms of input, it's referred to what the student is able to take from what they do learn. For example, in an English-speaking country, the input is all the environment, what the people talk or the signs they are able to read. But in a Spanish-speaking country like Chile, such input is limited to the classroom. So then the intake would be much lower than expected in that case. So the research question is that the use of mole-based polling for practice have an effect on vocabulary intake in a class of 23 adult students from Basic English 1 belonging to Universidad Santo Tomás during each lesson. So the objective in that case is to determine possible effects when using a specific mole platform on a course of such adult EFL students in terms of vocabulary intake before the end of each class, preferably during the last 15 minutes. And the specific objective is to establish an initial profile of the students before the application of such interventions, and then final profile after using such platforms. well, another specific objective is to use Kahooting for sessions for reinforcing vocabulary in that case, and use such information to identify and compare the results. The null hypothesis, I stated that these polling platforms may not have a positive effect and instead have a negative effect. But I want to falsify this null hypothesis, and I want to use the working hypothesis, telling that these platforms do have an effect, no matter if small, medium, or large. And this is one of the mind map of the constructs I wanted to define for this study. The use of poll in terms of EFL, using a poll-based platform on adult learners. Adult learners are special to primary or secondary students because adults tend to learn what do they need for their lives, instead of children that they learn without knowing why in the future. And the poll-based platform, also known as classroom polling system in other countries, that we were using for this study is Kahoot, in that case. The fundamentals of the research is a quantitative study with a positivist paradigm, a post-positivist in that case specifically, and decided under pre-experimental guidelines. What does it mean? That the same course acts as a control group and experimental group at different stages. The subjects, as mentioned, are such adult EFL students coming from a course that's taken at the same university. Those students were chosen and certified A1 thanks to a placement test done by the teacher in that case. The procedure is the following. As you can see, this is the initial state where the first test is applied. Then it comes to interventions, 4 interventions using Kahoot to reinforce vocabulary on students, and then the final test that is used to compare an evolution between an initial and final state. The research materials are the test by itself. The initial and final tests are different in the way that questions and answers are scrambled to avoid any kind of cheating because of knowing the questions from before. The Kahoot modules that are created specifically for the lesson the teacher she wanted to do in that case, and a list of words to limit the words I wanted to assess, in this case to ensure internal validity, basically. The data analysis techniques are the t-test, doing a comparison between 2 samples, and the observation of the alpha values, p-values, coherence D, and t-values. Some of the things that could affect the trustworthiness of this study are the sample mortality, in which students may or may not come to the lesson due to attendance. For example, compromises that are out of the teacher's will in that case. The other thing is the Hawthorne effect, in which if we are telling the students why are we doing this study, then they will respond according to what they expect from the teacher, and that's not the intention for that. Well, we did a 2-step internal validation to ensure the instruments were validated enough and reached these stages. So then, from these 23 students, only 9 were able to take the initial test, and only 13 were able to take the final one. And what do they have in common in that case between these students? It's 8 students were able to only do both tests, which represents the 34.8% of the population. And this is the model of the test and the answers that are used in the Excel analysis tool in that case. This is a dichotomous test, meaning 0 points for a correct answer and 1 for a correct one. And as you can see, in light gray we can see the results of each student's initial test, and in dark gray we can see the results of the post-test, having slight changes, variations from initial to final stage in that case. And the values that are important to analyze are, for example, Cronbach's alpha, Cohen's D, person correlation values, and the D statistics. The Cohen's D in that case measures the effect of the Kahoot modules on vocabulary intake levels. As you can see, using the correction factor because of the size of the sample, we have a 0.4, and it's near to the median effect that's generally 0.5 in that case. The another thing is the person correlation value, which ensures the test is it ensures the test is valid enough in that case. According to the degrees of freedom, this value should be higher than 0.66, and of course it is. It is 0.72. Okay, so the contributions on the research are the positive effects that have in vocabulary intake. In that case, we demonstrated through the Cohen's D that using Kahoot for reinforcing vocabulary and favoring the vocabulary intake levels may be positive in that case. Yeah. Integrating mobile technologies in the learning of languages would be useful in that case, and engaging, as I can see during the practicum stages, an expected effect on using Kahoot were the participation and engagement of students. They were more cheerful, they were more cheerful in the case, simply. The limitations is, as I said before, this is a pre-experimental design, so we cannot make these results be applicable for all the adult learner students whose levels are in A1. To make results be generalizable, we need to convert this research in a pure experimental design. And another limitation I had is the sample mortality, which affected negatively on the precision of the results, because such students only represented 1/3 of the population of the classroom. So their directions for the next study is to create a pure experimental design based on the same principles of this study in that case. Using more levels would be more interesting too, to check how do they behave in B1 or B2 levels, for example. And the addition of more subjects. We need 50 or more participants to ensure more precision in the results. Okay, as a teacher and a researcher, thanks to this study, I was able to identify 3 things. The first one is the strength. I have the power to integrate technology with the English classroom to make students be engaged and favor their studies, to make this not static as ever was in that case. And I was able to solve many problems during the lesson, for example, Wi-Fi troubleshooting or some devices not working. I have always backup devices for the students, so they are not losing the action. But some of the weaknesses are essentially to myself as a teacher without technology, in which the students were not able to understand properly when I was giving instructions during the tests or the Kahoot modules when they saw the first time. And this should be addressed using better CCQs in order to ensure that students will understand me next time. And this is a challenge I would like to take for the next practicum stage, in which I would like to reinforce CCQs and, well, not to lose also the adoption of technologies, because they're important in this case. They have a potential, they have the power to make students be able to learn wherever they want, for example. It has a lot of potential. As you can see, these all are my references. If you want more information, you can consult on my research paper. Thank you very much.